And it's highly, highly erotic, so don't go look at it if you're easily shocked.
Or if you don't want to know about the men's urinal.
If you don't want to know about the men's urinal.
I don't wanna know
But
about the
what
men's urinal.
got me on the whole thing, I mean, whether or not some of it was a turn on or not a turn on in that whole argument, was that she kept referring to a certain bodily part of a man as a codpiece. And I know perfectly well that a codpiece is an article of clothing.
Yeah.
And I said, wouldn't someone catch this? And then I found out she's actually an editor, and she edited her own book. And I understand that some people that are authors also edit, but I would, if I were to do that, I'd switch with somebody and have somebody else edit my book, because I would think that somebody would catch me and let me know, this is a piece of clothing. This is not a body part.
This is not a body part.
Not a body part.
Well, the interesting thing about that entire situation was that the author turned that experience into a marketing opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
Sent out a newsletter. It was the #1 bestseller at that website.
Of course
that
it
book
is.
got massive
because
play
everybody went
because
to
of
read
that
it
review.
to see it, and I recommend this book. Is perhaps one of the best laughs you could ever have if
I
you're
had
not
an
easily
email.
offended. I said, this is the attack of the killer tomatoes of romance novels.
The fish that saved Pittsburgh. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Pretty
You
much.
know, it's going to be it's a huge hit.
I got an email from someone who said one of the most popular review on our site is about is also for an erotic novel that Candy read. It's for Decadent by Shayla Black, and it has some of the most extremely strange plot structure to justify certain acts. And I warn anyone, if you're particularly sensitive to erotic content, don't go near there. But so she wrote a review, just absolutely breathtakingly amused by the content of this book, and it is now the #1 review on our site. It is consistently linked to. It is linked to all over the place. So I had an email from a guy who said, my girlfriend's studying in Australia and I'm here in Chicago, and we use Skype to talk to each other, and lately we've been reading each other Decadent by Shayla Black just for amusement, and we've reached the end and we're really sad. Do you have a recommendation of something that's just hilariously funny in a classic example of what were you thinking? And I said, well, I have the perfect book for you. And that's the thing about our site, that, you know, I don't think you have to give up the right to be a reviewer or a critic just because you're a writer. Because, first of all, the decisions you make as a writer are informed by what you like, what you read.
But I admit that I do it out of being a big chicken, because I have, seriously, I have a friend who wrote a book, and she's written a couple, but she had one that did pretty well, and I'm not going to name it because I don't want to start, because I'm a chicken. But anyway, she also did reviews, and she reviewed somebody else's book and gave them a not a really bad review, but kind of a mediocre review. Well, this other author went on it became her mission in life. You know, and she did things like go to Amazon and give her a 1-star rating, and then go to Amazon under 10 nom de plumes and give her a 1-star rating so that she could lower her overall average, which she did. And she did it on every website, and then she got her friends to do it.
There are a couple authors
she went to all these different blogs and blogged about how horrible the book was that my friend wrote. And, you know, I got to tell you, it's a really good book that my friend wrote. It's like, it's really good.
Well, hey, negative attention can always work for your positive.
But
negative attention can make it turn into sales.
You know, but but you know, when I don't lie. If there's a book that I don't like, I just don't mention it. If there's a book that I really like, then I tell everyone.
One of the nice things about our book is that it's nonfiction.
Now, because, you know, a certain publicist who shall be killed did not send me my copy. I don't have an excuse for not having finished the author's book by the time they're on the show, but actually I didn't get a copy of your book in advance, but I went on to Amazon, I think, where you have or Barnes & Noble. One of them had an excerpt.
Amazon had it, Simon & Schuster had it, we had it.
Had an excerpt, the first the introduction, and I read that, and it was very funny, which I expected it to be because I read your blog regularly, so I knew that it would be funny. But it's, you know, the industry, people, it's really funny, the whole idea about writing romance and not taking it seriously, you know. And I was telling you a story, I was telling a story earlier, and I'll tell it again, about, and NPR made me think of it, about going to a private book signing event in Miami, and David Sedaris was there, and you know, and I love David Sedaris. I absolutely adore David Sedaris, and I read all his stuff. But he's reading an essay that he had just written, And it was the essay that it was one of the ones that ultimately went into Dress Your Family in Corduroy and Denim.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's reading this, and it's about being on an airplane, and he's sitting next to a woman, and he's trying to describe the woman, and he says, and he's hoping that she won't notice him or something, and he figured he was okay because she opened a novel. He says, you know the one, or you know the kind, one of those with the embossed cover. You know, and everybody laughs because they're all very literary at this event, you know, and he goes on. But afterwards, my very proud friend takes me up and she wants to introduce me to David Sedaris. Oh, look, this is my friend Toni, and she's a writer too, you know, just like you. And I'm going, oh God, don't introduce me to David Sedaris. And he says, oh really? What kind of thing do you write? And I had, at that time, only my first novel had come out, and it was an erotic romance. Okay, and it's called.
So was it embossed with heaving bosoms?
Witch's Night. You know, it has it. Well, there's no heaving bosoms, but there is man titty on it. Okay,
that's a good thing.
But he says to me, "What do you
Especially
write?"
if
And I
it's
said,
embossed.
"Erotic romance." And he goes, "Erotic romance?" I said, "Yeah, the kind of thing that has an embossed cover." And he had the good grace to blush, but he was like, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, "You ever read any?" He's like, "Well, no." I said, "I didn't think so," but it was.
That's
just
actually
funny.
the hardest balance we have to strike on the website and in the book is, on one hand, you have people who think that romance is absolute trash, that it's porn for women, it's sexuality for women who can only tolerate erotic content when it's wrapped in the most pink, ruffly packages, and it's basically meaningless. And that's absolutely not true. It infuriates me when I come up against that opinion and that condescension, because romance is essentially a multi-billion-dollar industry created by women for women that, judging by the history of Harlequin, is over 60 years old.
And what's their, you know, with the economic downturn, Harlequin's numbers are up. They're way up, like
32%
Yeah.
versus this quarter last year. 8% in a normal retail market is pretty good. 32%?
32%
That's
just
huge.
last year.
And that is exactly the point that we've been trying to make all along, that romance is valid, important, and utterly worthwhile. And for the life of me, I can't understand why a billion-dollar industry created by women for women doesn't get more attention. I mean, there's three things alone
Well,
you can talk about at length.
and I've got a release coming up, and I'm working on my book, my book tour, which this year is going to be a driving around New England book tour. Last year I went to.
I'm doing that same
Yeah,
tour.
last year I went to
It's a pretty tour.
The previous release I went to
You
California.
can go really fast on the Merritt Parkway.
Yes, you can.
Go the
So
speed of
I'm
sound.
calling all these bookstores up, and the ones that I was at them with one of the first two books in the series, they're really happy to have me back because I do a good book signing and I sell a lot of books, so they like me. But I'm, again, I say, well, let's get these literary bookstores, the independent bookstores, the important bookstores, let's give them another shot. So I start calling them up, and they're like, well, we really don't sell that sort of book. And I'm like, oh, okay.
When you don't really want that kind of money, okay,
right,
that's fine, more for me.
Sells. But I'm not, I don't have, the book that I have coming out isn't a romance, but it's been classified in Mira's catalog as romance.
Is this the one coming out in June?
In June, yeah. And it's mistakenly been classified as a romance. So they look it up and they say, oh, it's a romance. And I'm like, well, no, it isn't. And they said, well, it says right here in the catalog that it is. And I'm like, well, I swear to God it isn't. I wrote it, and I'm quite sure that I would know if it was one.
We've had
because
the
I
same
have
experience.
written romances.
Yep. They're not always the same. If you know that it's not a romance, then
Well,
it's
you were
definitely
saying
not
I was
a romance.
looking for your book, and you were saying that
It's everywhere.
Whatever.
It's everywhere you want to be. It's classified officially as nonfiction, women's studies, humor. These three tastes do not go great together on a bookshelf. So I created The Hunt for the Heaving Bosoms because I knew that if anyone from my website actually went to a bookstore to go find it, they may not be able to find it. Now,
so to report back to you
yes,
where it was found.
I am asking for pictures as they hunt for bosoms, and it's awesome because not only have I had stories of people talking to the bookstore